On today's episode of Restore Your Caring Soul, my very special guest is Dr. Stephen Farmer. He's a shamanic practitioner and licensed psychotherapist. We're filming against the beautiful backdrop of Sedona, Arizona. Today, Stephen is going to share his special wisdom about animal spirit guides, and he has a special message for all you modern men out there. Hi, welcome to Restore Your Caring Soul. And today my special guest is Dr. Stephen Farmer. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me here, Eileen.
Yes. Yeah. Stephen Farmer is sort of the go-to person on animal guides and all around the world. And he has several books and some oracle cards, and so I just want you to get to know him a little bit today. And we are here in beautiful Sedona as our backdrop and enjoying the day.
Can't beat the location, Eileen.
No, you can't. No. We'll look good.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your work and how,
Sure.
Where you got started.
I'm a former psychotherapist. Actually, the license is still inactive, or is inactive, but I still consider myself, I draw from those trainings and traditions in psychotherapy. And then about 20 some years ago, I was introduced to shamanism. And I caught fire. I did a 2-day workshop, and you don't become a shaman in a 2-day workshop. Mm-hmm. But I knew I wanted more of this, so I did a number of different trainings and learned a lot about shamanism. Eventually I quit my psychotherapy practice and then went into writing a lot of the books and the oracle cards that you mentioned. And actually practicing shamanic healing in the last few years is all the trainings that I've done and accumulated, etc. And they've kind of blended with some of the shamanic healing, depending upon the needs of the client. That, and I teach a number of workshops, including how to get messages from your animal spirit guides, as well as some others.
So, can you tell our audience about what is exactly an animal spirit guide?
An animal spirit guide is any animal that shows up in an unusual way or repeatedly in a short period of time. And that animal can be both the physical animal as well as it can be a symbol of the animal, like a poster of a bear, or somebody talking about a bear. Or you have a big dream about a bear, for instance, especially if that happens in a short period of time, any of those things happen repeatedly, something pretty big is going on. Yeah, and it really is at the discretion of the viewer. In other words, is it as to determine whether it's unusual or not. Example, where I live, there's a lot of crows. Other than when they wake me up in the morning, too early in the morning, I don't pay much attention to them because it's not an unusual sighting. It's really relatively common. But if a crow landed, let's say, on a table that was 3 feet in front of me and gave me the one-eye look, I'd say that's unusual. So I want to pay attention to that because spirit or God, and I use those terms interchangeably, really is, in a sense, sent this representative. I call them sales reps. They're trying to, sell you something, where the selling you is the message and what the meaning might be of that particular visitation. And it's not the life force of the crow, not the spirit of the crow, that specific being. What it is when they're a sales rep like that and they come to you to deliver a message, it's one way to describe it, it's like the oversoul of all crows, or the collective consciousness of all crows, sent this messenger to indicate something to you that will help you on your life path, give you some guidance, give you some tips, give you some suggestions, advice, etc.
Right. So is this a Native American only tradition? Or?
It's a really good question. No, not at all. I have a friend in Australia, and he talked about his grandfather. His grandfather had a black cockatoo as his main spirit animal, sometimes called power animal, or totem animal, but a main spirit animal. And Jeremy said that his grandfather would not travel, wouldn't go anywhere until a black cockatoo appeared. So there's in the original people of Australia, that was very, very common. In most indigenous communities, we've missed that, in our broad culture here, is that intimate connection with the world. That the mountains speak to us, the clouds speak to us, the trees speak to us, and certainly the animals speak to us. In fact, what's interesting about that, in most Native American language, there's no word for object or thing.
Oh, interesting.
It's the cloud people, the animal people, grandfather wind, grandmother ocean, brother mountain. You know, everything is related. It's hard for us to get our minds and our hearts around that, but that's the beauty of working with animal spirit guides. Is it's an avenue to start reconnecting to the world and experience the magic of the world, and our connection. These truly are relatives. They are relations. There's a Lakota term, mataquiasan, that when I've done sweat lodges, Lakota sweat lodges, typically you say that as a simple prayer when you go into the lodge. And it just simply means all my relatives are all my relations. It's a reminder that we are related to everything. And we're working it.
Yes.
You know, people are getting onto it a little bit more. And this is one avenue, like I said, of animal spirit guides.
I think that the work that you're doing and the work of many different shamans and artists, it's really needed in the world.
Absolutely
right
agree. You know, it's happening and it's needed, and there's an evolution going on in human consciousness, and we're called. It isn't that we seek these things, we think we do, but we're actually called to, let's say, workshops, seminars, trainings, etc. like this on shamanism. Shamanism has become very popular, and part of its popularity is because it is earth-oriented. It's another aspect in a broader sense. It's just, animal spirit guides is just an aspect of that.
Right.
You know, there's a broader field, if you will, of shamanic realities that I'm really happy to see it being sort of infiltrating, you know, the consciousness of those who are called to it.
Right. You're really brilliant at picking out examples, such as if someone is feeling the owl is talking to them, or they draw an oracle card and they get owl. What does that say to you?
Sure. One of the ways I teach people about this is when an animal appears in an unusual way, or repeatedly, like I said, symbol or physical, there's a couple of things you can do. One is, think of the characteristics of the animal as best you can, if you do understand, or look up the characteristics. And most people, I think, are familiar with owls, that one of their gifts or their medicines or their powers is that they're able to see in the darkness, you know, very, very clearly. That's when they do their hunting, primarily. So we can extrapolate from that perhaps what is being said to me or communicated to me, if an owl appears, let's say on this bush right over here, right when we're talking, is, maybe there's some darkness that I'm not aware of in someone else. Or B, a shadow or a darkness in myself that has yet to be revealed. Or maybe I'm just a little bit conscious or a little bit aware of it. So owl comes to me to remind me as like I said, a courier or a messenger or a sales rep. That's my latest idea about this, a sales rep that says, hey, farmer, pay attention here. You know, there's some deception that's going on, something that's hidden in the shadows, so be alert to that. The second connection with owl is often associated with wisdom, you know, deep ancestral wisdom.
Absolutely.
So it may be suggesting to me that I need to be aware of my ancestors more and call upon them. Not just mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, but, you know, the deeper, the old ones that walked this land for thousands and thousands of years ago, that can still come back to guide us, teach us. And in fact, sometimes, this is a really interesting one, sometimes, some of you have probably had this experience after someone that you love dies, of an animal appearing. I've heard so many stories about that, Eileen. An animal, a dove, shows up after grandma is buried. And the person who is watching this dove just a few feet away knows. It's a message, it's a courier from grandma. Basically, they're saying, it's cool, I don't have a body anymore. I don't have to go through all the suffering that the body does. You know, I'm in spirit world and I love you. And so they send an animal like that. Another woman told me about a dolphin after she buried her father, walking on the beach, and there was a lone dolphin, which is kind of unusual.
Right.
And she just knew that was a messenger from her father.
How does a person know that that message, like what part of your body do you know that this is a message?
Again, excellent question. We perceive the third dimensional reality just like we perceive spiritual reality, and that's through our eyes, our ears, our body, and sometimes just our mind, that knowing. The woman with the dolphin, she just knew. It wasn't like she had to go, okay, is it my father, and see something or hear something. She just knew it was her father. So it's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, sensory. Goosebumps, etc. A feeling in the body. I start to feel like one of the big cats. Or cognitive, which cognitive is the ones who say, I don't know how I knew, I just knew. So one of the things I teach, Eileen, is that learn about your primary perceptual mechanisms. In other words, are you more visual, more auditory, and lean on those. Or I might hear in my inner voice, this inner voice saying, hey, heads up, you're fooling yourself about something here. And that's often how I get my messages. I'm a communicator and a writer, and I work with words, so it makes a lot of sense. A third way is, like you said, goosebumps. You get some sensation going on in your body. I often say I call it my fur. When my fur stands up.
Yeah, I like that.
My fur stands up. Either I'm getting sick or I'm having a spiritual experience. And I'm very healthy when that happens, every time it's happened. So I'm having a spiritual experience. It's saying something in my body. Almost like a very primal kind of a knowing, through the body. And then again, cognitive, which I mentioned, sometimes the messages just come in and go, yeah, right there it is. And I just know what the message is and the meaning. Another example, if I may, is snake. I had this just the other day. I shared this in the workshop. I was walking along with my dog in a area that we go to and do some hiking. It's not a rigorous hike, but a nice hike for us. And I'm walking along, and all of a sudden this little snake slithers across, and about a foot and a half away. And some people are terrified of snakes. I love them. I think they're just the most amazing critters, one of the most amazing on the planet. Okay, message. What's the message? Snake, number one, I know from previous experience, snake is often signifies some big change. Kind of like butterfly, transformation. But this one, snake specifically, shedding an old skin. And we go through many evolutions in our life like that. And that was the first piece for me. The second piece was this. It was interesting. I did what I just said. I closed my eyes and said, okay, snake spirit, what else? And snake spirit said, well, here's the deal. I'll paraphrase. He says, here's the deal, dude. You haven't been working with me. I'm one of your main spirit animals, your power animal, one of your power animals. But you're calling on these other guys, Raven and Wolf, a lot. But you don't call on me. And I'm here to help you. This shedding of the skin and this emergence of this new cycle for you of healing. You've noticed that, in your work. You're seeing this with clients, that something pretty magical is happening. You need to call on me more. And that was a direct revelation.
Powerful.
Yeah, that was a direct revelation. And that's shamanism right there. It's the path of direct revelation. We don't have to go through intermediaries. We go right to the source, the spirit, whatever the form of the spirit is. So that's an example of those two things. The fourth thing, look it up on the internet. There's others. Ted Andrews' book, Animal Speaks, a really good one. There's references, or you can look it up on the internet. Just do a search for owl spirit animal or snake spirit animal, and you get some clues from that.
I do like the idea of using your own, like, what did I get? And definitely speaking through the fox or the snake's voice, that's a very true thing that can come through.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, people in workshops that I do just walk out of there going, this is cool. Because it works. I'm very practical in that way. It's like, this stuff works. Just like shamanism, it works. That's the beauty of it.
I have been working with these cards. I'm a grown woman, obviously, but I love these children's spirit animal cards. The messages that you and your wife, I believe, helped
Jessica,
put these together. They're simple, they're insightful. The artistry is beautiful. And here's one I just drew, Crow, Believe in the Magic. And
interesting.
Yes, it is.
I didn't see it
We were
before, and
talking-
crows came up as an example, and
Yeah.
the magic. That's cool.
So how does a person work with oracle cards?
Yeah, there's a two-word phrase that I like is intuitive collaboration. Isn't that wonderful? I just love that expression. And it really is an intuitive collaboration between you, Spirit, and the specific way that Spirit is expressing through any of these cards. That's the beauty of oracle cards. Another is that they're user-friendly. You know, there's guidebooks, mine as well as others. There's a plethora of oracle cards out there. And I would advise the listeners and the viewers to you can go into a New Age store if you're looking for an oracle card. One way is just to feel the vibe. You know, if you're more kinesthetic, is to feel if there's one that vibrates. Another is by recommendation. The children's spirit animal cards in particular, Eileen, I'm glad you love them because they've gotten accolades from parent groups.
Yes.
Kids take to them. My 2-year-old, well, he's now 5, but my grandson, who when he was 2.5 years old, my daughter sent a video of him just going through the cards in his early language, so he's saying the names of the animals, even though they're technically designed for like 6 on up.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've heard stories like that. I've heard another story where the parents will sneak in at night and borrow the kids' cards to do a reading.
I understand.
You know, so, yeah, stuff like that is just awesome. And I've done a couple of children's groups like that, you know, and we play with the cards. And I just remember this one little boy, probably 7, and Mom was with him, and he drew the card Beaver. And Beaver is, do your work.
Yeah.
And the little boy goes, you know, like this, you know.
I do that.
And Mom's going, see? Let him alone, Mom. It's okay. It's oracle cards. So there is a magic to the oracle cards in that way. There's a collaboration that occurs when your intention is really clear, especially.
Mm-hmm.
And the intention, what I mean by that is the question may be something like, I'd like to receive a message. I often suggest do a prayer before you draw a card. There's different ways that you can put out a 3-card spread or 5-card spread in some of the cards. The Earth Magic Oracle cards are, what else can I say? They're magical also. And then I've got 2 others, Power Animal Oracle cards and Messages from Your Animal Spirit Guides Oracle cards. And again, different people like the different ones. You know, it just depends on your affinity. Some people like the Messages, Power Animals, children's cards. Other adults too, by the way. You're not alone. Like the children's cards. So it's an amazing process. And again, one more piece and way to provide guidance for yourself in this sometimes very challenging world. You can draw one card just to get a message from that one card and see how it resonates with you or what's going on with this collaboration. I call it resonates, you know, you just go, kind of like when you said owl, when you saw owl, when I talked about owl, symbol, you didn't see about owl, but you heard about owl, and you sat back in terms of the meaning of it.
Yes.
That's often what people have, the experience.
Right. Yeah, it can be a validation.
Yeah, validation, good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah. So one last question about these oracle cards. In the early 90s, I worked with an animal deck, and I drew the bat. So bat was my spirit animal at the time, but bat's not with me anymore. Bear's been with me strong, 6 months.
Right.
Bear brought in this TV show.
Yeah.
So, and just a few weeks ago, I had a vision, and Bear was holding me, and I was a newborn baby.
Sweet.
Yeah, oh,
yeah,
it was powerful.
Very sweet. Yeah.
So, how can your animal spirit change?
Well, the animal spirit guides, or I use the term spirit animals, they can come and go. You know, they may just a one-time shot, one visitation, and that was enough, or they may come and hang around for a while. Mm-hmm. It's very far. Any animal can be an animal spirit guide. Crickets. We have crickets in the garage. I hear them, I don't always see them, but when I see a cricket right in front of me, that's a message. Mm-hmm. Now, how often does that happen? Not that often, so I consider it unusual. And they're probably going to show up again. In other words, like Bear, you know, they're hanging around. You know, they're obvious there. It's not unusual to hear them, so I don't pay much attention when I hear them. I don't have a problem with them, you know, being in the garage. As long as they stay in the garage, you know, it's okay. But when one shows itself, then that's a message to me. And the message to me is, look, you got to sing. Because I play guitar and I sing, and I've written quite a few original songs, and I neglect that sometimes. So cricket's a good reminder. And will show up periodically, who knows how long, maybe for as long as I'm in this house, I don't know.
I saw you at this experiential weekend I've been on in Sedona, gathering of the Shamans, and you displayed a very powerful, he asked all the men in the audience to stand up and claim that I'm a man of the earth. And it was very powerful.
Yeah.
And I know that you've worked with men, so I was just wondering if you could share some of your thoughts about some of the expectations that are put on men that maybe they come from culture or...
Oh, yeah, I've worked, as you noted, I've worked a lot with men. I've done men's groups in the past. I have about 3 really close brothers, that we meet once a month as a group and just talk about stuff and share with each other. That was fun at this workshop. What you mentioned, Eileen, I had the men stand. It was not planned, and I won't do this because of the mic, but stand up and really tall and just hit their chests and just declare it, I'm a man of the earth. And so we had probably about 50 men, I think, in that group.
At least.
And I said, again, and it's just the energy went, boom, like this. And then we had the women stand up and do something. I think there's a longing in the hearts of men for a closer relationship with the earth, number one, and also a closer relationship with other men. And there's different ways men get together. It isn't always in groups. I went to Hawaii. There's a friend of mine, Bill, there, and he invited me to go with his men's group, which is they went out and we rowed out into the ocean. And we didn't talk much, but there was this camaraderie that developed out of doing something together like that. So it's not just like men going to men's groups, although I'm an advocate of that, but it's also hard for men to let down and be vulnerable with other men. Typically we're in competition with them. Typically we're like, we got to tighten up, with another man. What I'm seeing, the beauty of what I'm seeing too, is though men can be both powerful and loving.
Yes.
At the same time, with women and with other men. There's like barriers to get through though, because of what we've been basically indoctrinated with, understandably, from the men who've come before, the ancestors, our fathers, grandfathers, etc. Don't cry. Yeah. Don't let yourself, be a wuss. Don't, be a killer. That kind of stuff. And there is a time in a man's life when we need that warrior archetype. We need the warrior. And sometimes that's missing too, that men become too soft and lose track of this, I say archetype, this element in ourselves. It's a makeup in men and women, the warrior, warrior goddess. The warrior's job in this archetype is to protect the king. The king in old days was the one who connected upward to God or spirit. It's an interesting dynamic, an internal dynamic. The warrior never attacks, never kills, unless he's in service to the king. The warrior sits at the gate, sees something encroaching, stands up, shows his full stature, because his job is to set those boundaries and to protect the kingly part of ourselves, the divine. And if that encroacher continues, then he'll perhaps take his sword out and just show the glint of steel on this encroacher. Like, don't mess with me, or another term like that. And at that point, usually the encroachment stops. But if he is in service to the king, he'll take care of that encroachment in some way. The warrior without a king becomes a mercenary or a killer. And the king without the warrior, the kingdom perishes. And in more practical terms, if I'm not able to have that, it's not hard-nosedness, but that ability to stand up for myself, to speak my truth. The warrior, that's his job, is to speak the truth. If I don't take care of my king, that kingly part, that part of nobility, if I don't take care of that king, then I lose track of that, and it becomes invasive. The world I feel like the world's invading me. The good news is there are men's groups. There's a group called mankindproject.org, I think is the website. I refer men to that sometimes. They do an initial training called New Warrior Training. I went through that back about 20 years ago, and it's an excellent training. You know, when I go to workshops, when I'm in workshops, I participate 120%. You know, but there's always the observer going, "Oh, that's good. Okay, that's good," because I do a lot of work. I teach a lot too. But my experience in there, it was like an initiation training for older men. I did this in my 40s. I think I was about that age span that I said, and it really shifted things. So, men, if you're listening to this, or women. Write this down for your man, mankindproject.org. Check it out. We have a responsibility here to tend to the earth, you know, to awaken ourselves to other kind of realities than what we've been trained and indoctrinated with. I wrote a book years ago. It's called The Wounded Male, and it's about this way we carry our wounds and we don't let anybody on. Mm-hmm. You know, like, oh yeah, my leg's only half here, but don't worry about me, I'm okay. My father, God bless him, I feel something right now as I say that. He went to his grave thinking that he didn't affect anyone.
And that's not true.
A very quiet man, passive man. Yeah, he drank and all that. And he could be boisterous and, you know, construction worker, hung around with all that. But I know that. It was a conversation I'd had with him. He didn't think he really mattered. And I want to say to men out there, you do matter. You walk into a room and you matter. Love as best you can. You know, you can still be tough and resilient and strong and warrior-like and love. You know, that's the part that another archetype is the lover. And that's the part that gets sort of sideswiped or gets focused on a romantic relationship. Mm-hmm. And it's much bigger than that. Like Miguel was talking about, you know, just unconditional love. But don't put conditions on unconditional.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that. It touched my
pleasure.
heart. I just wanted to thank you for being on the show and explaining about animal spirit guides. You bring a special wisdom to the show, and I thank you very much.
Oh, God bless you. Believe me, my pleasure. I love disseminating this information. You know, people grab onto it pretty readily. So thanks, Eileen. Thanks for having me here.
Today we explored the concept of spirit animals. Come back next week to find your spirit animal. Trish O'Malley, Certified Color of Woman teacher, will lead us in a guided meditation to meet your spirit animal guide. She leads a creative project that helps us hear the messages from these guides.